Welcome to the August 15th edition of The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We're going to be talking to you today about James O'Keefe going incognito and voting in Minnesota with 8 of his friends who did not have IDs. Nick Shirley continues to beat the drum on Medicaid fraud, this time in New York. Joe Rogan hosted a show, and I'll tell you what he has to say about Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson, and Candace Owens. And we have a little bit of footage from Candace Owens and her debate with this guy from TPUSA, Andrew Wilson. I'd like to know your thoughts about that debate. And what do you think about Charlie Kirk's murder? I hope you'll email me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I really want to hear from you and know what you think. And then we're going to talk about the great Trump deception. More on that in just a moment. Today's show is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, a restaurant services company right there in Atlanta, Georgia, and Bogey's Beef, one of the best beef jerkies money can buy. So James O'Keefe went to Minnesota and he dressed up as a Muslim, and he brought 8 of his friends with him, also dressed up as a Muslim. Now, Minnesota has one of the most bizarre voting requirements, or I guess is really a loophole. If you are registered to vote in Minnesota, you can bring 8 other people with you, and they do not have to have an ID. All you have to do is vouch for them, and the elections officials will allow them to vote. This is, folks, this shows, I think what it shows me is the absolute absurdity of Minnesota's voting rules. Roll tape.
Say that I'm vouching for them. The name is William Lawrence. The question about the vouching program, vouching. I can vouch for them, but they are not registered. That's okay, that's fine. Can I bring 5 more from up to 8 people? Okay, that's a good thing. We go back and we get Krishna and Ernesto and Mohammed. In Minnesota, you can show up on election day and vouch for up to 8 unregistered voters. Members of the Justice League dress up in traditional Muslim attire, including a transgender wearing a burqa, disgusting, and put this vouching law to an extreme test on primary day, August 11th.
Gonna be a baller, shot caller, 20-inch blades, only Impala.
The vouching,
You're vouching for
I vouch for them.
Oh, great.
Is that okay?
Yes.
How does that work?
Well, if you're all in the same precinct
Yes.
and you are already registered, which it looks like you are, then you can vouch for them as ID for them.
Oh, good. She says to me, I say they do not need ID. She says, you are the ID.
He is the ID.
See, I am the ID. And no ID needed. I just vouch for them.
Well,
That's
you're
good.
the ID.
I am the ID. That's good. How many people may I vouch for?
What is it?
8?
I thought it was 6.
I can vouch for 8 people? Mm-hmm. 8 people, no ID. We come right back. Thank you. Most poll workers we visited were willing to let us vouch with no questions asked, even when presented with the most absurd situation imaginable. While other poll workers did take issue with our investigation, revealing their awareness that something about this vouching system is deeply flawed or wrong. Yet for some reason,
Well, it's not deeply flawed or wrong. It is disrespectful to every person in America that takes the time to go and vote and exercise our franchise. It is disrespectful to our United States flag, which stands for freedom. It is disrespectful to the legion of people who have given their lives for our freedoms. Yet in Minnesota, you can show up if you're registered to vote. You can bring 8 complete imbeciles with you, people suffering from senility, or Somalians, if you want to, and allow them to vote. It is a desecration of our republic, and it just makes me mad as hell to watch that video. The only thing that helps keep your sanity, if you're listening today on the radio, welcome. We're on the John Fredericks Media Network and on cdm.press along their digital platforms who rebroadcast our feed. But you can also watch us on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, and get the video along with the sound. So please come on over. You can also listen to us on Getter and interact with us live there. So we'd welcome you there. But please look for John Gordon Truth and consider subscribing and like us if you do. It really helps move us up on the algorithm. Well, Nick Shirley has gone back to New York where he has been pursuing Medicaid fraud. And let's watch Nick.
This might be a bit shocking. Remember when I went and exposed the adult daycare scam inside of New York City? These adult daycares were billing for an impossible amount of patients inside of Flushing, Queens for adult daycares. For instance, this guy right here operated an adult daycare that received $44 million of your taxpayer dollars. I exposed it plain and simple, and Governor Hochul and Mayor Mandami absolutely went completely silent. And it's super funny because when I exposed the daycare fraud in Minnesota, then New York City gave $4.5 billion to 2-year-olds. And I said, why are you guys doing that? They said, well, this initiative extends mainly to 2-year-olds, but intellectually you may be eligible. Governor Hochul started beef with me, and I was like, well, I'm going to finish it. Well, now it turns out that Governor Hochul is receiving donations from these adult daycare scammers in New York City.
Living Well received $8.6 million in 2025, and on their peak day of business, they billed the state for 406 beneficiaries. My name's Nick Shirley.
No, it's only any survey.
Well, Kathy Hochul received over $55,000 from these adult daycares in New York City. Yes, this guy right here has been actively donating to Kathy Hochul. So the reason why these politicians get so mad at me when I expose the fraud is because I'm exposing the very dollars that benefit them and their political agendas inside of their own state.
I mean, I'm just dumbfounded that someone would have the audacity to criticize someone because they're exposing fraud, because they're exposing people taking hard-earned, taxpayer-paid dollars that they're not entitled to. It's called stealing. And Kathy Hochul is turning a blind eye to it because she's on the take. Her campaign is profiting from people that are receiving tens of millions of dollars through Medicaid fraud, and they pass her on campaign donations. And so she turns a blind eye. Surprise, surprise. Well, I don't know if you've been following Candace Owens and her doggedly pursuing the murderer of Charlie Kirk. I don't know what you think. I don't know where your head's at on this. I know where I'm at. I've been consistent from day one. I do not believe that the narrative that we are being fed is correct. I do not believe, nor have I ever believed, that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. Now Candace has developed more information. I will say this. Well, I'll come back and talk about that at the end. Let's watch what Joe Rogan had to say about Charlie's murder.
The more time goes on, the more I'm leaning towards Candace Owens.
What?
Wait, whoa.
She's got some very interesting theories about it. Look at that. I don't think any story that you hear in the news is accurate.
I think
there's
could
always
be none or
none.
Spin on it at least.
There's always some spin.
But the
and
public
so
believes
whatever
it.
the spin is about Tyler Robinson, there's some to it. I don't know how much of his, but there's some. And one of the more recent is they found a photo that they were saying was Tyler Robinson, but then people noticed that because he's real thin, people noticed that the cars in the background, the proportions were distorted. And then they realized that what they had done was taken a guy who's like much wider than Tyler Robinson and shrunken the perspective.
Really?
Yep. Yep. And then when you see him for what he really looks like, you're like, oh, there's no way that's that guy. That guy's big.
And then you're like, well, it's mostly true. Like, no,
It doesn't add up.
shifting
No,
it.
they changed. Like, you look at the hood of the cars behind them; they're all like that narrow.
Who is that?
It just goes on. And why are the American people willing to accept things that are so blatantly false? Just because the FBI says it, oh, it must be true. Do we have those images now, Anthony? Let's look at, this is an image that we have been told is Tyler Robinson. Well, when you look at that guy, and I'm sorry if you're on the radio, you can't see it. You can fix that right now by coming over to YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Instagram, or where else are we? X, Anthony? This guy I would describe him as broad-shouldered and a rather large frame. And he certainly got some guns there. But then next to it is Tyler Robinson. Now you tell me, these pictures were on the same day. Are you telling me the guy on the right is the guy on the left? The only thing they have in common is a maroon t-shirt. And if you've been following Candace at all, you know that she's reported that there were like 50 or 60 people in the crowd on that fateful day in Utah that all had on maroon shirts. She said initially she thought that must be the school color. She went and checked, nothing close. So why are all these people showing up in maroon t-shirts, as including the alleged killer? I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to tell that those images are different. If you look at the guy that we're told is Tyler Robinson in another shot that was released, they attempted to shrink the person. And this just shows you how incompetent they are. They shrink the person, but when they did that, they also shrink the cars. So yeah, this guy must be on Ozempic, fast acting, because at one moment he's stocky and broad-shouldered. The next moment he's thin, starting to resemble Tyler, except he still has large biceps. But then the cars are narrower. So they also must have gotten a overspray of Ozempic, I guess. I don't know. It's just bizarre. And the fact that, now everybody's trying to discredit Candace. And look at how much money she's making from this. I think that is actually, I would characterize a reward for hard work and good journalism. Did you have the image of Tyler in the courtroom? I guess that's the one you'd put up, right? Yeah, there we go. All right. So Candace also claims to have gotten exclusive footage of the shooter. So let's roll that tape and I'll narrate as we go for our listening audience. But you see someone jumping up onto the roof, not jumping on the roof, running across it. And then he skips down on the lower part of the roof and then crouches into what is called a military crawl. Is that right, Anthony? A lateral crawl. That's right. And so he crawls laterally towards the place that he takes the shooting position. And you can see him unpacking his bag, presumably a rifle. And he's lying down prone on the roof. And we don't really see anything coming out of a rifle. I don't see any blast or any flash. And then he scrambles to his feet here in just a second. I don't know how long he's on the roof. Probably, what have we been watching? A minute and a half. And now you see some activity. He lunges up, jumps up, sprints off to the right on the roof. I don't know what that's supposed to show or prove. But was it Tyler Robinson? That is the question. And did that person, whoever it was, is he the actual shooter? I mean, I don't think so, for a number of reasons. All the stories we've been told about the rifle seem bogus to me, that it was assembled on the roof. We didn't see him assembling anything on the roof. We saw him somebody taking a rifle out of a knapsack and then putting it back into the cover and then sprinting towards across the roof. But the biggest fact to me is that there was no exit wound. There was no visible trauma on Charlie from whatever killed him. And so I am discounting that it was even a bullet personally. I mean, the theory that his microphone exploded, just like those cell phones that or pagers that Israel detonated a year ago and killed or maimed up to 50 people. I think maybe it was 30. That's more believable to me than a 30-06 that does not penetrate the softest part of the human body. We're told it lodged in Charlie's body and did not produce an exit wound. I just call BS on it. And so does Candace, and so does now Joe Rogan. So Candace offered to debate anyone from Turning Point, and they actually held the debate earlier this week. Patrick Bet David was the moderator, and we brought you this footage from that debate.
Just out of curiosity, are you between 0 to 100? What is the likelihood that you think Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk and killed him?
Based on the evidence right now, I don't know. I'd say 75, 85%.
Candace?
0%.
0%.
I'm at 0.
So
with what we've seen in terms of the evidence, I'm at 0%.
Andrew Wilson also had claimed to have text from Charlie that he received the night before. And we've got that video as well.
I'm going to share the message with you today, which is the first time this information's ever been publicly revealed. On September 9th, Charlie's security team wrote to him, yes, law enforcement has been fully supportive and agreed to a security plan and posture. Tomorrow's event will be covered by both my team and the campus PD. If additional support is required, patrol units will be available. I have 11 on site. Charlie responded with this, okay, great. Remind them that they are there for one person's security only, because I'm somewhat worried the left is trying to kill me. That was a message sent September 9th. Whatever could he have meant by that? Well, I think he meant exactly what he said, that he was worried the left was going to try to kill him.
I agree. I think that's exactly right. But I think that it was a conspiracy, and I think it was more than just the left. I don't know how this stuff happens. I don't even really know why it happens. We can speculate on what occurred and who the people were responsible for Charlie's death. The thing that troubles me the most is what I perceive to be a cover-up and a fake story that accompanies Charlie's death. And that traces right back to the FBI and our own federal government. And I just cannot imagine that our own federal law enforcement would be complicit in something like this. But how can you draw any other conclusion if you agree the person we've been told and shown as Tyler Robinson does not even closely resemble Tyler Robinson in stature or build? Ergo, it wasn't Tyler Robinson that was on that rooftop. Combine that with the fact that many, including myself, do not believe that whoever was on that rooftop fired a 30-06 that lodged into Charlie's neck and didn't present an exit wound. And Cliff Marchison, or whatever his name is, Kurt Marchison, I'm sorry, Chris Marchison, I think, has replicated that shot from 152 yards using a number of different targets and a similar 30-06 with all kinds of different loads, heavy loads, light loads, bullets that expand, bullets that don't expand, all sorts of different, every single one of them, without exception, left an exit wound and did mass trauma to the target. So all the evidence absolves Tyler Robinson. It also contradicts the malarkey that we've been told, which is one thing were it not from the mouths of the FBI. And that gives me tremendous heartburn to think that our own federal government might be complicit in Charlie Kirk's murder is very hard to contemplate or to accept. But candidly, that is my leading suspicion, and I can't call it a belief right now, but I'm very open to that possibility because I've looked at 2 and 2, and it's not coming up with 4. The person's not the same. The rifle story doesn't hold water, and then the circumstances of how the rifle was found, and then that Tyler Robinson was discovered 6 hours later in a Dairy Queen, and he went through multiple wardrobe changes throughout the day. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. None of it does. So it just fits perfectly into my narrative that this federal government is rotten to its core. It is rotten to its core. There's a cancer in our government that has to be surgically removed. And where is Trump in all of this? I just don't know. But his silence does not absolve him if he suspects that our own government or people in it had involvement with Charlie's death. Or maybe it was Mossad. We know that Israel was really sideways with Charlie. He was getting criticism. He was being defunded by Jews in this country because of his change of position on Israel. And he was receiving death threats. There were also financial improprieties that we've talked about inside Turning Point. And one of the most disturbing things of all, I guess I would rank it number 2, right by the FBI somehow covering this up, which is what it appears to me to be. I'm not imagining it. I'm looking at the facts. I'm comparing it to the evidence. And I'm contrasting it to what we have been told. And I am squarely in the camp of Candace Owens. Now, Anthony and I joke, I try and get to the frickin' point. I used to work for a technology company in Atlanta called Lanier Business Products. They were the number 1 seller of dictating equipment. Our younger audience has no idea what I'm talking about. But you used to have these machines. Lawyers and doctors in particular would pick up, dictate a patient's record or dictate a brief, and their secretarial pool or assistant would type those notes and put them in the patient file or the client file, whatever. So our motto was pick up, speak up, and hang up. And so that's kind of my guiding light on this show. And Anthony and I work all the time on trying to condense what we're going to say into as few words as possible out of respect for your time. But Candace and all these other YouTubers, they don't do that. They like long form because long form gets you more listeners. If you can say in 3 hours what you could say in 30 minutes, it is monetarily more advantageous for you to spend 3 hours. And now I'm watching a lot. I see a lot of podcasts that are expanding to 4 hours. Good Lord, who do they think has time for that? But very few people sit there for 4 hours. But what it does do is catch a whole lot of people that might watch for 10, 15, or 30 minutes. Suddenly that becomes a download, which in the podcasting business is money. I don't do this show for money. It's not part of our motivation, our strategy, or our plan. Now, if someone wants to advertise with us, we're certainly not going to turn it down. But that's not the motivation for this program. The motivation for this program is to spread the truth as economically in as short a period of time and as efficiently as the facts and the story will permit. my point is, that's a long, drawn-out explanation to make a simple point that Candace wears me out. She will spend 3 shows and 10 hours getting to a point that we would get to within 10 minutes here on The Truth. I think that detracts from her credibility to some extent because people talk about how much money she's making on her show. Frankly, I don't care. I mean, I wish that she wouldn't take advantage of my time the way that she does because I find myself having to fast forward through a lot of her dogmatism and her soliloquies about nothing to get to the meat on the bone. And I kind of resent that, frankly, but it is what it is. And podcasting is a lot about show business, and it is a lot about money, and it is a lot about playing the game. And Candace has proven that she can do that very effectively. Now, there is one last video I want to show you. And again, I'm sorry to our radio listeners. You can fix this very easily just by going right now to Rumble, Facebook, X, or YouTube. Look for the live button, search for John Gordon Truth. We'll pop right up and you can watch our stream as well along with our clips. Now, this is a clip of Charlie Kirk being interviewed in the days leading up to his murder. And I want you to watch him. I don't know if unless you're on the radio, but if you're watching our live stream, you can read pain on Charlie's face. And this was 3 weeks before he was killed. And it was an interview that he had with Megyn Kelly. And I would just ask our viewing audience, what do you make of Charlie's demeanor, his presence, and his body English? He looks like someone who's very sad, someone who might be even anxious. That's not the Charlie Kirk that I knew. I was with Charlie on 10 separate occasions over 8 years, some for 10 minutes, some for 2 hours, and varying lengths in between. I knew Charlie reasonably well. We weren't best buddies, but we were congenial, better than acquaintances, less than good friends. I would love to have been Charlie's good friend. I mean, I had the utmost respect for him. And I'm not just saying that because he's now departed. I'm saying that because I've said it consistently. He was the smartest person I have ever known, bar none. His command of history, of politics, and the Bible were second to none. And he was quick. He was so quick. If I had to fault him on anything, he was too quick. He would snap before he thought. He did have a very sharp edge, I'll call it. And he was prone to reacting to what people said rather than thoughtfully responding. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, I saw it repeatedly. I never experienced it, but I saw it. I saw it a lot. And you can see it if you go back and watch his videos. Now, sometimes he does better than others. I mean, I have seen him with people where he is very patient and leads them thoughtfully away from their position and thought and beliefs to another contrary view. And he was masterful at it. But I've also seen him cut people off at the knees, and it's painful to watch. I saw him live one night in Palm Beach really jump in onto this guy who asked him what both I and my wife thought were pretty benign questions, and Charlie just lashed out at him, had him stand up, say his name, really embarrassed the guy unnecessarily. But look, you got the bad with the good. Charlie was probably tired. He was probably tired of being people messing with him. But anyway, He generally, he was upbeat, he was alive, he was sharp, he was alert, he was spontaneous. That interview with Megyn Kelly, that was not the Charlie Kirk that I knew. And it's painful to watch that. And, it just makes you wonder what was going through his head. And particularly when you listen to that text message that he wrote to Andrew Wilson. There's so much sketchy activity that was going on that college campus that day and around Charlie. His chief of security said they couldn't fly drones because it was in the Salt Lake City flight path. And there were dozens, if not hundreds of people who witnessed drones flying over the venue. There are reports of a military spy plane, surveillance plane, circling high above the venue. I mean, the deep state fingerprints are all over this, and it's got to stop. But it's not going to stop ever unless the American people stand up and say no. I mean, I would go to Washington, D.C. and stand outside of Langley, Virginia, and the CIA headquarters and demand that they stop killing people. I don't know if they had any involvement in Charlie's death. I don't know. I have my suspicions, though. They say the Mossad and the CIA may as well be one organization, except they spy on each other, but they also work cooperatively together, according to what I've read and what we understand to be true. But here, clearly, it's the FBI that's taking the lead. And the intel agencies of our government receive unlimited amounts of funds, have virtually no oversight, and we fervently believe that they have committed atrocity after atrocity after atrocity, and that they just flagrantly, blatantly lie to us, and they appear to be untouchable because they kill people like President Kennedy. Maybe they tried to kill Donald Trump in Butler. Sure as hell wasn't Thomas Matthew Crooks. Sure as hell wasn't him acting alone. And I don't think it was Tyler Robinson that killed Charlie Kirk. Yet the similarities between John F. Kennedy and Charlie Kirk are unmistakable in terms of the circumstances surrounding their assassinations. And even more significantly, surrounding the cover-up. And so those are the things that really bother me. But the third most bothersome fact is that all of Turning Point, every single person, every single interview conclude that it was Tyler Robinson. Is there no independent thought? Is there no independent thinking among Turning Point employees and leadership? Look, these people masquerade as being Charlie's friends. With friends like that, who needs enemies? It freaks me out. It saddens me. It angers me. What happened? Who orchestrated it? And we damn sure know who's covering it up. So make your voice heard. Send a letter to the editor, call talk radio, write your congressmen and senators and tell them that we demand the truth on who killed Charlie Kirk and that they surgically remove the cancer that is growing, that's festering inside our own federal government. All right. Well, President Trump, you may know, was in Turkey earlier this month, attending the NATO summit. And while he was at that summit, he said on the podium that he was Iran's number one target. Now, you know, this is a difficult. I've said it before, and it's kind of a difficult line to walk. But President Trump acts like he is surprised and victimized by virtue of the fact that Iran wants to kill him. Well, they better not. Okay, I'll say that. They better not, and they better not try. But you got to think for a minute and consider the fact that we have killed 13 or 14 of their senior leaders and as many as 50 of senior and middle rung leaders. You don't think that if you were an Iranian loyal to that government, that you would be mad? You don't think that retaliation would be a logical, predictive occurrence if you were the guy who gave the order to take out those 50 or 40 or 45 or 50 people, including their senior leadership? I mean, can you imagine what would happen if that happened in our country? I mean, I don't even want to speak the words, but just imagine if the president, vice president, and the cabinet and congressional leaders were somehow removed from this earth. I don't want to say the words. I just don't. Doesn't feel right. But you get the point. We would be at war. We would be at war. So I have no sympathy for Iran at all. I can say what I've said for the last 6 months. They deserve everything they're getting. They deserve it based on the fact that they took our embassy and held our diplomats hostage for 444 days, provocation enough to bomb the hell out of them. They deserve to be reined in and bombed based on the terrorism that they have committed around the world for the last 50 years. They have killed thousands of our servicemen and women. They deserve anything that they get. Their determination to achieve enriched uranium and produce a nuclear weapon is provocation enough to go in and bomb Iran. The fact that they have killed 44,000 of their own people in an act of genocide this calendar year is provocation enough for President Trump to have done what he has done. Everything he's done, including taking out their leadership. But I don't think you can act surprised or put off by the fact that they now want to kill President Trump. It's not justified because what they've done, they brought it on themselves. So President Trump was on his way back to the United States by way of England. I guess it was I don't know whether the stop in England was originally planned or not. No, it probably wasn't. He would have left Ankara, Turkey, on the new 747 gifted to our country by Qatar that we have now outfitted and rebuilt to our standards. But evidently they only got about 98 or 99% of the job completed because as President Trump was preparing to leave to come back to Washington, D.C., the Secret Service alerted him that actually Israel intelligence had developed what they believed to be a credible threat against Air Force One. Presumably there was someone with a shoulder-mounted missile launcher that was lying in wait for Air Force One to take off. I've always wondered, where do you get missile launchers? You know, every time you watch the news, all those guys in the Middle East are running around with missile launchers. Where do you get them? I wouldn't know where to get one if I wanted one, and I don't, because I don't know what I'd do if I had one. But they all seem to have them. It almost seems like a status symbol if you're a terrorist or live in the Middle East and that you got to have a shoulder-mounted missile launcher. But anyway, one of those crazy people were going to try and take down Air Force One. So they called in the old Air Force One because it had more sophisticated anti-missile defense systems than the new Air Force One had been outfitted with. Now, this is all according to the Washington Post and CBS News that we've learned this information. So take it for what you will. I'm really just repeating what they've told us. And so they bring in the old Air Force One because it's going to have more presidential protection than the new Air Force One. So they make a big deal out of, and not terribly uniquely, of President Trump leaving Ankara after the summit. And he's seen waving to the crowds from the top of the stairs on the old Air Force One. And he boards the plane and the doors closed. And but there is visible on the other side of Air Force One a catering truck. You know what they look like. You've seen them. Do we have a picture, Anthony? It's in the clip. Have we run the clip? Oh, well, let's run the clip. Sorry if you're not on Rumble, Getter, X, Instagram, or Facebook, but I'll try and narrate us through it. But let's roll the tape.
So we are learning some brand new details today on an operation that could be straight out of a political thriller. The Wall Street Journal reporting that some U.S. officials thought an alleged threat on President Trump's life was, quote, impractical, implausible, even impossible. But with little time to confirm, Secret Service chose to move forward with a secret plane plot in Turkey, having the president board Air Force One. We have all seen this video. Then he was whisked off with a few other officials in a catering truck that you see there behind the plane, transported onto a military plane, then met up with the other plane in the UK once they were out of the zone. Watch this.
I go by Secret Service and the military. They wanted me to go on a different flight, a different plane, equal safety, but they wanted me to do it, so I do it. I do what they say.
Well, it's probably pretty smart to do that. But if you were watching the clip, you could see the catering truck on the other side of Air Force One. It pulls away from Air Force One, and then, you know, the scissor lift comes down and the truck goes off out of the view of the camera. Well, the belief is that that was the exact catering truck that President Trump made his getaway in, and he got on board a military 757, just like Trump Force One, and made his way off and took off in that airplane. And then the old Air Force One followed right on its heels, landing just minutes behind the 757 in England sometime later, where he and his top cabinet and staff members each disembarked from the 757 and old Air Force One and got on the new Air Force One and made their way back to Washington. So that's inside baseball on Trump's exit from Turkey. Anthony and I are pondering, though, if it was too dangerous for President Trump to leave on Air Force One, you know, the blue and white version, why did they allow his cabinet, the media, and senior staff members to leave on the old Air Force One just moments behind him? Think about that. Let that set in. And it's not like, you know, they made an impulsive decision. This plan was hatched over a period of 5 hours, according to what we're told. So someone had plenty of time to say, maybe we shouldn't let your most loyal people fly on Air Force One. Think about that one for a while. And you can tell me what you think. You can tell me in the comments, or you can write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. Just keep sending those letters. I love hearing from you. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They are a restaurant services company serving North Georgia. And by Bogey's Beef, a nationwide purveyor of beef jerky and beef sticks. They are in such high demand, Bogey's can't make them fast enough. And Bogey's has a real niche market in golf courses all over America. They're in the top 60 of the top 100 golf courses in the U.S. and all of their accompanying resort outlets, like at Sea Island, Georgia. They're on the Cloister golf courses, but they're also, you can find their beef in the halfway houses at the golf courses or in their gift shops in the hotel. Same at Kohler in Wisconsin, at Whistling Straits, and a number of other resorts around the world. And down here in West Palm Beach, where we are, we can pick it up at Amiche Market or at the Breakers Hotel and on their golf courses. You can also get it if you're staying at the Hyatt in downtown West Palm Beach. They carry Bogies, and they're available on Amazon. Just look for Bogey's Beef. It's really good stuff. Jared Weisfeld is coming up. He's the president of Start Publishing, and we're talking about school safety, parents' rights, and Mandami. We've got Natalia Merkaver. She's a filmmaker, a documentarian. We're talking about immigrating as a child from the Ukraine, thoughts on Israel, and her new documentary, Uncancelable. And then we've got John Strand. He's a J6er, who was a political prisoner and is running in Florida's 19th congressional district. His primary will be coming up on Tuesday. So again, if you're listening to us on the John Fredericks Media Network, welcome. Also, the CDM.press network and their 13 digital platforms and their social media that live stream us. And of course, across our own social media, Rumble, Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, and yes, TikTok. We're trying to get to the younger crowd. So check us out on those social media platforms. And you can also watch all of our past episodes on johngordon.tv.